Any final thoughts on that one, Rick?
Well, we don't professionally deal in the investment banking business, financial placement. We don't deal with angels for the most part, the categories I've talked about. And we don't do that because we usually don't do earlier stage deals. We've done them over the last 40 years. But in today's environment, we rarely look at them. So we're really looking at larger, or even if they're startups, they would be large ones, not the think about somebody comes in with a good digital media idea. That's probably not something we look at. I'm just telling Travis we're doing one that's a unique fiber optic high-speed technology. It's already been deployed, about $12 million spent in upstate New York. It's so unique that the Russians are actually looking at it as a climate somewhere in Syracuse. But that's a $70 million, not really start, the second phase. And that's sort of the thing that we look at. Now, having said that, I've had a lot of friends, as Bob knows, come and knock on the door, and we've tried to be helpful to refer them to angel networks, or in general, though, I'd say that a lot of the stuff that we actually would see might be suitable for Travis and some of the other guys that actually do. There are funds that do earlier stage things, but if you're just looking for smaller amounts of money, particularly seed capital, you got to start with friends and family and people you know, especially for seed capital. Secondly, and we'll get to this later on qualification of what turns people on and off, because I've been an angel investor myself. But you've got to be willing to put your own money up. First time somebody comes in the door and says, listen, I got the greatest idea in the world. I spent 5 years working on this. You know, my wife's worked 24 hours a day to put me through school. I've got this wonderful idea. And, you know, people are going to put up $10 million. Well, there's no way that I'm even going to help somebody like that, because they will get absolutely nowhere with any sophisticated investor. It just isn't going to happen. And people have to be realistic in today's environment. But anyway, we'll come to that later.
That's a great segue to the next question. And I'll ask Travis to address this one. How do you go about capturing an angel investor's attention? What really lights the fire to that individual, knowing that they have sort of unique attributes of their own, and they have sort of unique interest and horizons for what they invest in? So what would be something that would pique their interest?
Well, I think they're, so you can sort of look at it from business types and company types, I think, or business models. I think they're looking, frankly, for a lot of the same things that we're looking for as investors. So they're, and these are kind of the check the box items. So it's, a scalable business, a business that's addressing a large market, that's solving a significant problem, a business model that, again, from a scale aspect, they're probably looking for recurring revenue, large opportunity for growth. All of those aspects, they're going to be looking for certain key business characteristics, and those are just kind of, we got to check the box to show that this is just a high potential return investment. Secondly, again, for a lot of angels, I think they're going to be looking for something that's in a space that they've potentially had some past experience with, and so that they can hopefully contribute more than just their capital to the situation. Again, I think when you ask how to capture their attention, the other kind of just key things, the ability, again, to be referred in by somebody that they know and trust. If you're coming to an angel investor, I think, and Carl can speak more to this, but boy, you better have a strong background in what you're propagating, the idea that you're there to talk about. Hopefully, you have a successful track record that you can speak to. Otherwise, it's going to be tough, frankly, to be taken serious, because it's such an early stage opportunity. It's people. So I think those are some of the key things. And the last thing, again, it may feel like a little bit of blocking and tackling, but coming with professional materials and a vetted idea, that you've taken time to talk to other folks and have kind of safe conversations about your ideas, and it's been well refined and well vetted prior to a conversation with somebody like Carl, I think is absolutely critical. And having materials that are professional is critical.
Carl, with your group, with New World Angels, and even working with some of the smaller syndicates,
well, I would
how would you deal with this?
Add on to what Travis said. One thing I look at is first, how much is the entrepreneur willing to put in themselves? I mean, do they have any real monetary skin in the game? In some cases, they may not have much in the way of resources, but I would want to see that they really have in effect mortgaged themselves, to the hilt to make the deal go. The other thing for me is if the business isn't already really up and going, I would prefer to see a situation where they have another job with an income, and they're doing this on nights and weekends. So in effect is, I've got my daytime job so I can pay my bills, and simultaneously though, I'm working on this great idea, which I know could be a great deal, and I'm just looking for that point when I can make that transition from this being in effect my night and weekend potential job to being a real job. And that may sound obvious, but I'm amazed at the number of people I have coming to me, who haven't even considered that sort of thing. What they're really looking for is someone to invest in them and turn it into their full-time job, and they haven't even generated any revenue. So,
I think one of the things that, since a lot of the folks here are interested in technology, is that if your idea utilizes any intellectual property, that you spend some of your money early on in getting with a good patent attorney. Because if you forget to do that, and you're out walking around shopping things, sending things on to people, it's amazing in this world of friends are friends and money's money, and your idea might soon belong to somebody else.
Well, next question, and I'll address it.
excuse me, can I?
Yes,
add
absolutely.
Just
I
add
guess.
one point on there about intellectual property. If what you have has anything to do with that, learn the basics of the patent system. And the reason I say that is, I'm just absolutely amazed at how many people come and say, well, we have a patent on this. When what they have is they have a patent application. It's a patent application that hasn't been examined. And maybe they'll end up with a patent, maybe not. And even if they do get a patent, well, you don't know what kind of claims that you're going to get, and ultimately that's the only thing that really counts. So to enhance your own credibility, gain at least a basic understanding of how the system works, because, to avoid really making yourself look foolish.
Okay. Carl, as a follow-on with this, if there were 2 or 3 things that immediately come to mind for you, as you're thinking about making that investment, that angel investment, that seed stage investment, what would be the top 2 or 3 things that pop into your mind that are top on your list for making a decision?
Well, when I see an opportunity, I like to look at 6 things.
Okay.
And at the risk of being Rick Perry,
No, that's fine.
I'll try to go through. First, of course, what is there a problem here that the world needs to have solved? Okay, and in your case is, you've got a way to solve that idea, either faster, better, and cheaper, whatever that's unique, somebody else doesn't have. Okay, from there, the third thing is, can you make money yet? Now I want to see. All right, you've got this great idea. It is going to solve this problem, but you think there's a way to make it work. The fourth thing is, do you actually have a way to distribute it? And the reason I say this is because there are a tremendous number of great ideas out there, but people really have not thought through carefully how they're actually going to sell it. And in many cases, there are a lot of great ideas. There are all kinds of forces out there, already entrenched systems and interests. They're going to work against you, for doing it. And the entrepreneur hasn't carefully thought that through as to how they would do it. Fifth thing, your management team. How are you, do you have the team that's going to make, really can make this thing go? Do you have relevant experience, that sort of thing? And finally, how are you and I going to actually make money? How can you exit out of this thing and turn it into a payday?
Well, I would say that one thing that people often forget to do in the very beginning, I think, is to understand who are the competitors. They think they got a great idea, but it may already exist. So doing a professional competitive screen to find out what else is out there will save you a lot of time and money and effort. We occasionally, there's a guy who actually went to Florida State, graduated 3.9 in research, and works for the United States government in an interesting capacity. He was out at McDill and now elsewhere. And we get him to moonlight, and we have our own data banks, and he's got his. And it's very effective to look at what's there, before you go on. Because you can spend a whole lot of time and effort to find out that there are 2 or 3 other opportunities out there, patent spending. Doesn't mean you can't do it. You don't want to walk into a sophisticated investor and they say, you know something, it's nice to your brain is super Travis, but it's funny. So I was just talking to a fellow the other day, and we did start, one of our people did some research on that, and there's 6 other of these companies out there. 4R.
Okay, very good. What would be the top 2 or 3 things that would be in that decision process for you?
Well, I'm sorry.
I would just add one kind of major thing to particularly, and maybe kind of bring Carl's elements together, which is this concept of trying to drive a high rate of return, or the potential for a high rate of return. It's my guess that most angels, if they look and they want to commit, $500,000 of capital, and they look in the business and they go through the 6 elements of this criteria, and he says this is probably a business that can be a $2 to $3 million revenue business in 5 years. That's probably not going to get Carl very excited, because he's going to want to make upwards of probably 10 times or more, much more than 10 times his money on these types of investments. So, angel investing is inherently extremely risky, and so they have to be rewarded for those types of investments. So, I think bringing those criteria together to say, okay, I can credibly look at this opportunity and say, this is a high growth opportunity that could be worth, several tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars someday, and that's what gets you excited about the opportunity.
Great segue, because the next question I had on here really addressed that. What would be your expectation as an angel investor for the investment that you place, both in terms of possible rate of return and the time horizon that you would want to see it invested?
I think, first of all, people's timelines and expected rates of return vary. So as an entrepreneur, I think that's obviously, I'm sure at some point here we'll touch more on expectations on all fronts, but I think that sometimes, I've talked to angels that are comfortable making, in certain types of businesses, 3 times their money in 3 years. But I think most angels are much higher than that. I think most angels are much, as I mentioned, upwards of, kind of 10 times plus, and certainly maybe way over 10 times, because not only is there a risk in the business, but there's a lot of times inherent financing risk in the business. And that comes in 2 folds. One, the ability of the company to continue to raise capital, but also the potential dilution that the initial angels may suffer as a result of their initial investment. So, again, I would say probably there's kind of a typical rates of return are going to be well over 30%. Internal annualized returns, and then again, it can just vary depending on the investor and the type of business. But I think 10 times is probably an initial.
Thoughts along those lines?
It's interesting, but just within New World Angels, we're having a debate about this thing. And let me give you kind of the 2 extremes. One is the traditional view, which is that you're looking for maybe a 10x or so return within maybe 5 to 7 or whatever number of years out there. The other is sort of what we call this concept called early exits. And in fact, there's an interesting book written on the subject you might look at. It's by a guy named Basil Peters. And his argument is, look, the angel investor should really look on shorter horizon type deals. And then the thinking goes like, look for something that you might be able to get in and out of within 12, 18, 24, maybe 36 months at most. Now, your rate of return is going to be lower on that, most likely, but potentially your risk is dramatically lower. And especially, and the thought is, we'll do it before any venture capitalists get involved in it, because that just significantly raises the time horizon and the risk. Venture capitalists don't like that. Even in the preface of his book, I think he even says, venture capitalists don't like me. But we're looking more and more at those types of opportunities. So you bring the opportunity, and if you could show us a credible way that you can build the business and provide an exit to the angel within 18, 24, 36 months, you're very likely to have our attention on that, because the risk could be dramatically lower.
I just quickly add to that too, that you're seeing a lot more businesses where they have that type of capability because of the proliferation of the internet, that you can build businesses that are very asset light, don't require the same amount of capital that they required 10 to 15 years ago. So that you're just seeing a lot more of those types of investments that are very asset efficient, if you will, that you can build those businesses.
Very good. Great thoughts.
Well, from our own perspective, having done an angel investor and raised money from angels as part of what we call direct investing and more partnerships, what we look for are only things where we bring more than money. I'll give you an example of that in a second. Secondly, only with people that we know or people that come to us with people that we know, because people are the centerpiece of any investment. You can have the best idea in the world, you got bad people, you're always going to have bad investment. And the third thing that we look for in that, since we don't want to really run anything unless it gets in trouble, and we're kind of like the folks at the bank, we'll take it over if we have to. We're really looking for people that have the ability to carry it forward and to scale it. Now, if we think, a lot of entrepreneurs, we've talked about this is a great subject for your class. There are a lot of people with great ideas, great companies. As you all know, the hardest thing in the world, and you mentioned this, right, is finding businesses that can scale and people have the ability to scale them, particularly if you're into the asset side of the business. I mean, that is difficult. And that's the mark of true. And at some point in time, they generally have to be corporatized when they get to a certain level. So the areas that we've been successful in this investing is also as it moves along where we can find joint venture partners or do a deal with the giants, because we're all in business to make money. So if you're the entrepreneur, come in and say, look, yeah, this thing's really going. The next, it's usually the second, the third stage of scaling, where that ship goes up on the rocks. You know, that can be bad. So the thing is, if it's going well, it may be better to do a deal, an initial deal, or a joint venture with a big company that can bring more than money, and they're the likely buyer at the end of the day. So if you're not in the asset light business, maybe it'd be an IPO, but if you're doing something that's going to require scale, it might be better to have a partner who's got the resources, the management, and they can help you scale. And there's one example, working on one right now. It's an entrepreneurial endeavor, except the entrepreneurs themselves are 20 million, so that's a pretty good space. So it's one of these early stage technology deals with the principals put in 20 million, and they're successful, but it's still a startup. And I'm not wild about this, but the one thing that they're missing, and I looked at this, was it's a hard technology deal. Even if they're successful, the verticals for this is very unique technology for marine aircraft. The cost of manufacturing a plant, start thinking about manufacturing, you're going to be in it, you can't contract it out, is a nightmare. Well, there's a big $20 billion company that operates in 126 countries that have expertise, and they also have customers that are in the area that can use the technology. So what I did is put them together, looking at it right now. And the deal here is if they're a partner, it doesn't matter whether the contract's $10 million or $100 million, because these people don't have to get around. They're able to move right ahead. So that gives the little company a great opportunity to go in and bid on contracts, technology contracts, because they got the giant sitting right over here. And so if they're going to do a deal with Australia Telecom, and they say, well, it's interesting, this company that's from Fort Lauderdale, how do you think that you're going to be able to deliver this $80 million contract out here in Australia? So, oh, by the way, our partner's doing the manufacturing, operates in Australia. They're providing a letter of credit and guarantee that all this is going to be put in place. That is a powerful thing for a small company.